to Integrated EDU,
where innovation meets education.
Here we explore fresh strategies,
Creative learning pathways,
and powerful tools to boost student engagement and growth.
Let's elevate education,
one idea at a time. Hey, educator friends, welcome back to Integrated EDU. I'm Megan.
And I'm Kara.
We are so excited to talk to you about our topic today. We just are coming off of a pretty exciting day in third grade in our building.
We did something in our building today we called it Unplugged.
Yes.
And so essentially what that was is our entire building did not use technology today, minus the secretaries.
Yeah, the secretaries needed tech.
Yeah, they needed that. So it was a pretty cool experience. Teachers were able to use their laptops during their planning periods, but other than that, we had no devices. So, our panels or like projectors, whatever, all of those were turned off. Students did not have access to their tablets. Even teachers also, we didn't have like our phones out or iPads or anything. All devices were turned off and put away when we were in front of students. So it was definitely, it was a good day.
It was good. Honestly, we were talking about it. It really didn't affect our grade as much as I anticipated. When I was like, well, how am I going to post on classroom screen their instructions and the timer, and the kids were actually really excited about it.
Yeah, they did extremely well. And I think it just kind of goes to show how far one way we can go sometimes with things, if that makes sense. How, I'm not going to say how many years ago when we became one-to-one classrooms, we got a grant for it. And, all of our instruction became so heavily tech-based, and, we had to reflect on that year and we had to back off. And I kind of feel similar to that, with all of the amazing things that technology can do for us. Sometimes it's nice to give the students a chance to unplug and just experience school without that technology piece. So it was a good day.
The other side of it too, though, is the kids knew that it wasn't an option. We can't just go read on Epic, or you can't just go do this, play math fact or whatever it is, that it just wasn't an option. And they didn't really have a hard time with it at all.
No,
they
really
were
didn't.
totally fine with it. Even my own kids, we have kids in our building that are personal children. My first grader came home and was like, we can't use tech tomorrow. It's a no tech day. And she was stoked about what that would look like. And she goes, the only thing I'm concerned about is how we're going to do yoga. And I said, well, maybe your teacher's going to show you how to pose.
I know. Truly, literally, when kids came into the building at 8:30 and we were able to use our computers until, that time, like the first tardy bell. And so right after our staff meeting, we're like, hey, we should quick make copies of this. So I had turned on my computer just solely to print that piece of paper off. And my kids noticed that my laptop was open when they walked into the door. I wasn't even on it, but my laptop was open. They're like, it's Unplugged day. Close that computer. And like they literally went off. And I was like, I wasn't even on it. Like I didn't break the rules. I promise.
I didn't break the rules.
So it was funny because they literally came in excited about it.
Yes.
And throughout the entire day, we of course, we planned for it and had all these things ready to go. And throughout the day, I had kids saying like, man, this Unplugged day, it's been really fun.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it's just really cool because don't get me wrong. I think technology is a great tool and can offer us so many amazing things in the world of education. But sometimes it's just really cool to give our students that experience of
what else there is. So on that, our topic for this month is disconnect to connect. Disconnect to connect. And we have multiple layers for that for you today.
Is that really surprising?
It's not. It's integrated. But thinking about being unplugged and disconnecting from your technology piece to kind of open up other pathways for you to instruct, it makes you step back and think, okay, how am I going to do this without technology? It's literally the opposite of when we got our technology. Because when we received tech, when we became one-to-one, or when we became this, we all followed the SAMR model. We all followed, how can I turn what I'm doing in my classroom so that you can't do it without
Mhm.
having technology? And now we're taking it and we're flipping it and we're like, okay, how are you going to do what you always do with tech and you don't have tech? So, thinking about, I think that it comes back to thinking differently about
Mhm.
some of the things that we're doing.
Mhm.
So today I had about 20 minutes randomly before we had to go to our snack and story and all the things. And I'm like, what am I going to do for 20 minutes? Normally, maybe you put on a YouTube read aloud or something like that. You're just kind of killing the time, if you will. We got out Play-Doh and we created Christmas trees. Who can make the best Christmas tree? Who could make the best present out of their Play-Doh? And we talked about, different shapes and 3D and how did you craft this and make this and,
Mhm.
all those things. It was just a quick, easy thing to just honestly to fill some time.
Mhm.
It's that time of the year where it's almost Christmas break. So thinking about just another way to bring in
Mhm.
those instructional strategies.
Yeah, in my room for probably about that same amount of time, we did puzzle rounds. And so I had
Mm,
different puzzles set out, and students could go to the different puzzles. They only had so much time, and then they would rotate. And so, again, you're thinking something simple. The kids aren't on technology, but you think of the skills they're using in just puzzles with a group, like the communication that has to be happening there, like all of those social emotional skills and being able to work with others. So, and honestly, they loved it. They didn't really want that time to end. So it was a good exercise in and not necessarily thinking about like that whole teamwork, social emotional piece that
right.
really wasn't at the forefront. I was thinking, just kind of a good gesture for all the hard work they had been doing, like something kind of, you know, more game-like and fun, and but it turned out to be a really
Integrated.
literally, it turned out to be a really awesome integrated exercise for
Yeah.
them, so
Yeah.
it was awesome.
The same with the Play-Doh. I had one kid go, I haven't touched Play-Doh since the last time we had Play-Doh. And I'm like, oh, so, just some of those things
Mhm,
to disconnect from technology. So if you're thinking about doing this, our principal was on board, the whole team was on board.
yeah,
Every student knew what it was going to be. So whether you're the STEM facilitator, we have a keyboarding person, your aides, everybody disconnects. Your principal, everybody. Like we said, the only people that get it are the secretaries because they literally run the whole entire building. So we had to use our classrooms phones, walkie talkies to communicate with each
mhm.
other. We couldn't text each other.
We did a attendance, like paper pencil
Yes, we had
style,
to
kids
send it to the
delivering.
office.
Yeah, you think old school, like, you always wanted that job as a kid,
Right?
going to the office to
Teacher
deliver
helper
that.
to the office. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if thinking about that, we may have picked kind of a challenging time as grades are due in 2 days. So we all were frantically using our laptops during planning, but thinking about how maybe you could implement that maybe just with your team or,
Mhm,
pose it to your building, to your principal and see if that's something that you want to try out just to see what it's like.
mhm,
So disconnecting from tech to
mhm.
connect with other ideas of how you can instruct that way.
Yeah. Honestly, it's really thinking of disconnecting to connect with other pathways.
Yes.
Technology is a huge learning pathway, but we have to make sure we're still hitting all of the other learning pathways in order for our students to really, grasp and understand how they learn best as a student, as a learner. Because if you're not giving them the opportunity, they're never going to find out.
Yeah. Which is onto our next layer of this. Good segue. Is thinking about how you instruct your students
Mhm.
with not technology. How else are you going to instruct them purposefully? So, disconnecting from what you have always done with your instructional strategies to connect with different ways to instruct your students. Um, it's a new year, right? We've
Mhm.
started semester two, 2025. Whew. And, every year we're like, okay, we need a reflection. We
Mhm.
need to, it's a new year, new us, new this, let's go. And so this is a perfect time to be thinking about what can you disconnect from that's not working, that's not purposeful, to connect to something that serves you as the educator in that room and serves your students more.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking about, you know, your students and your student growth and how are they doing on their testing, right? We always have mid-year testing scores. So what does that look like?
Mhm.
Are your students still growing? Are they doing a really great job? Or are they are they starting to falter? Are they plateauing? What are you doing that you need to disconnect from to connect to your students?
Absolutely. And I feel that kind of brings in another piece of this, imagine that, is disconnecting, like Meg said, to connect to your students, not just necessarily the instructional strategy side of it and like what you're wanting to bring out to the table, but also is what you're doing and how you're teaching them, reaching them. Like, oh, how are you going to best meet the needs of the students that are sitting in front of you for the rest of the year? You have a whole semester's worth of data that Meg was just talking about of did it work? And if you saw a little bit of growth, amazing, but how could you see more?
Mhm.
What pieces of your curriculum or the pieces that you're using, what should you be disconnecting from in order to better reach your students? Now, this is also a piece where when we're reflecting, it's not easy. We're not
Nope.
saying that it's easy because you never want to say or think that, oh, did my kids a disservice. That's not what we're saying. We're simply saying you like use the data, use the things that you have learned about your students and about your instruction over this last semester, and how can you better connect to your students for the rest of the year?
Yeah. You know, when we start talking about our pathways, you've heard us say, how do you connect to your students right away in the beginning of the year? You start using pathways. You try to
Mhm.
figure out what pathway they gravitate towards. What one do they use? Well, this is your time to really use that. What ones were working for you? Is your class a more musical class? Do they like visual arts more? Do they want to move more? You know, what are some of the skills that they're lacking that you need to bring in a different way to instruct them so that those skills can
Mhm.
grow. And I know a lot of us have curriculum that we have to follow. We have
Mhm.
those scripted curriculums. You have to get through these modulars and these lessons in this amount of time. You definitely have to follow what your district is saying for you, but could you look at it? Could you disconnect from the exact thing that it's saying and do it a little bit differently to connect to those students that you have this
Mhm.
year and help them grow for the next semester, you
Mhm.
know, and keep reflecting on that. And educators are so good at
Yeah.
reflecting. You don't really have to tell us to do that. We just
Mhm.
do it all the time. At the end of the day, we're like, wow, that lesson was just rock star lesson,
Mhm.
or that was a flop. It didn't work out at all. How can, you know, and we constantly are doing that in our head. I think what we need to remember though is to use that reflection purposefully. And
Mhm.
when we're thinking about all of that stuff, to use that to then, you know,
Mhm.
connect further into how we can instruct our students.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes when we reflect on a lot of times the outcome
Mhm.
of our instruction and the kind of what you see throughout, which absolutely needs to happen. But I think the piece that we don't always, and kind of what we're challenging you to do is, evaluating and reflecting on the resources that you used to develop that lesson or that you used to help you instruct, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And, reflecting on, do I need to disconnect from some of those pieces for a while to see if I can find something better to then better
Mm.
help connect to my kids?
I love that thought.
Thanks.
I love that thought. Thinking about what are you always doing, and is that what you're always doing purposeful, or are you always doing it because you've always done
Right.
it?
And
Yes.
sometimes it becomes that habit because, your first class, maybe your first two classes, it did
Mhm.
go really well.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. But then you keep doing it, but your classes
Have
are now
changed.
changing
Mhm.
and they're not those same students. And so now it might be okay, but could there be something better? Is there something you need to disconnect from that is either curriculum or maybe even just, you know, habit, I guess, and is
Mhm.
to better connect to your students. And
Yeah.
again, I'm not saying everything that we're challenging you to think about is easy by any means, but could you be bettering your students' educational journey by doing these things?
Yeah, and the growth is in the struggle.
Yes.
You have to struggle to grow.
Yeah.
You have to fail forward, if you will, and try
Mhm.
something that's outside the box for you.
Mhm.
Not only for us to keep excitement in for us as educators teaching, but also our
Mhm.
students. Having our students come in today and completely telling them we're disconnecting from tech, we're doing something totally different, and they're excited
Yeah.
because it's different for them. And they're more invested in, I think, how you're instructing them. They're paying more attention to
Mhm.
it. So, can you imagine if you were to come in tomorrow and tell your kids, you know what, we're playing music all day long, and we're gonna do this with this music and this with it, and just bringing in a pathway, a different way to
Mhm.
understand a content.
And they come in excited because they want to see what's going to happen next.
Yes.
They come in already curious. And if you think about it, when they're already curious about what's to come, they're already engaged. They are already sitting there waiting to see what it is you're going to tell them, how it is that you're going to instruct them, and what it is that they're going to be able to, create or share or whatever that might look like. And so there's already that piece that sometimes can be so difficult to get students to be excited about now.
That brings me another point about disconnect to connect. This is a lot of layers. What about
It's like an
connecting?
onion.
It is an integrated onion. I'm thinking about when you were talking about you are bringing in a different piece as the educator. You need to disconnect from your previous self to connect to a new self. So when you're coming into your classroom and if Kara and I came in today and we're like, "Oh, we're unplugging today," and we were just mad about it, and we were frustrated, and we weren't excited. What are you going to do to your kids?
Mhm,
Right? They're mad, they're frustrated, they're complaining about it. But if we come in, we're excited, like, we're disconnecting today. We're not going to have tech today. They're like, yeah, we're disconnected. They don't know.
mhm,
You are their guide. You are
mhm,
the adult educator in the room. And so if you need to connect to yourself more on what you really want your students to see, it's time for you to be creative in your classroom. It's time for you to sing off key. It's time for you to draw the stick people completely wrong, to just really connect to
mhm,
yourself and then be able to show that to your students. Get them excited about learning. Get them
mhm.
excited.
Yeah. That it really goes into we have a whole, session or workshop on, finding your voice as an
Mhm.
educator. And that's kind of what that is touching on, just being, disconnecting in order from things at school to just connect to yourself, as a person, as an individual, and also as an educator. What do you need, you know, for you to feel successful in the classroom, I
Yeah.
guess. And so just that I feel like comes down to just don't forget to be you.
Yes.
And
Be
sometimes we
you.
need to disconnect to be able to find that.
Yeah. And so some of those ways that you can do that, we want you to leave these podcasts with ideas and
Mhm.
and things that you can implement next week. We're coming in, it's the first of the year, we're starting fresh, we're ready to go, and it's our job to be excited about that. So the first thing you need to do is you need to come in hyped.
Mhm.
You need to come in excited. So how are you going to do that for yourself? Is
Mhm.
it bringing in a new pathway for a math topic, for an
Mhm.
English topic? um, and just trying something new? Is it coming in and looking at what you've always done in January for this exact thing every year and changing it up? What are you going
Mhm.
to do? Just a couple things different. What are you going to do differently about that?
Mhm.
Maybe you are always doing a reflection piece with your students. It's 2025. What are your goals? What are your things?
Mhm.
Could you do that differently? Could you
Mhm.
use a different pathway instead of the thing that you do every single year?
Mhm. And if you think of all the examples Meg gave you, it comes down to just simply thinking differently
Mhm.
about what it is that you are doing and how you're instructing your students. That's what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
You're teaching the same content. You're teaching the same thing. If you're staying in the same grade, the same content, you're going to teach the same stuff. But I challenge you to not do it the same way you did last year. Make it completely different. Kara and I have been in third grade for 3 years now, 3 years, and we have yet to do the same thing every year. I spent 12 years. She's okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
I'm
that
good, I promise.
it's that teacher sickness coming in. And you think I spent 11 years in second grade and not one year looked exactly the same. And there's power in that because
Absolutely.
I don't want to fall into a rut. I want to connect with my students.
Yep.
And I don't want the same thing. You can't rewrite the same lesson plan year after year because your students are different and you're different.
Absolutely.
So thinking differently about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess our message as you start off 2025 is think differently.
Think differently. Yes. Disconnect to connect to all of those things.
Absolutely.
If you're having a hard time thinking about how do you do that, what do we need to do to get that started, head on over to our website, integratedk12.com. Click on cohort, integrated cohort. You can sign up for a Zoom call and have us to help you disconnect from what you always done and connect differently for the second semester. We have group rates for that, individuals, so check that out. Also, this blog will be posted on our website. Head on over to the blog if you need it written. There's amazing resources over there as well to just kind of dig through and figure out what pathway that you want to use.
Yep, I was just going to say our blog, there is also some articles on there about the learning pathway. So if you're just kind of wanting to dig into those a little bit more, some more ideas, make sure you head over to that blog because there's lots of information there for you.
Yeah, and we want to know, how did you disconnect to connect?
Yes.
What one did you choose? Leave it here in the comments. If you know someone that needs to hear this message, will you send us to them, please? Share this link, send it on over, say you need to listen to this, and get them on board with this.
Absolutely.
It's time to start fresh.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
No better time than the new year.
Yes. All right. Hey, thanks, educator friends, for hopping on with us again at IntegratED EDU. We will see you next month.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with fellow educators.
Join the conversation in the comments and let us know how you're applying these strategies in your classroom.
Together, we can create meaningful learning experiences for all students.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.